Welcome to Soul Elevation, guiding your ascension to new heights. I'm your host, Kara Goodwin. I'm so delighted and honored to have the amazing Amanda Romania in this episode. You're going to hear me sing her praises in this episode because I just love her and her work so much. She's very gifted in accessing the Akashic Records. In fact, she has a lot of different modalities she uses to guide people spiritually, as well as lots of galactic knowledge. We talk about many different aspects of spiritual awakening, how she and some of her students could energetically sense that COVID was coming before it arrived in 2020, her work in the Akashic Records and how it differs from other methods, the role of your galactic heritage in this life, and so much more. We really pack a lot into this episode. Amanda Romania is an international author, visionary speaker, and master oracle of the Akashic Records, who bridges the spiritual and physical worlds to empower personal and global transformation. For over 20 years, she's guided sacred site journeys worldwide, taught metaphysics, and mentored individuals in developing their spiritual gifts and aligning with higher purpose. Based in Sedona, Amanda's work spans ancestral healing, past and future timelines, and cosmic wisdom for everyday life. Amanda will be a featured speaker in my upcoming Miracles Summit 2025. Join many amazing guests for this online event where we'll be immersed in the energy of miracles. I hosted my first Miracles Summit a year ago, and I'm so excited to enter this powerful vortex again. Get details and register at karagoodwin.com. It's free to attend live or upgrade to receive lifetime access to the replay, or go VIP to receive amazing gifts from our guests and take your experience even further. Learn more at karagoodwin.com. And now enjoy this episode. Well, welcome, Amanda. I can't tell you how excited I am to have you here today. Thanks so much for coming on Soul Elevation.
Thank you, Cara. I'm just so excited. I love spending time with you. It's always such a joy. And just seeing what this show and what you've been creating, it's an honor to be here with you and everybody else today.
Well, thank you so much. And you were an early guest. You actually have been on back when it was Meditation Conversation many years ago.
Mhm.
I love your work. I've had several readings with you personally there in Sedona and virtually because you do Zoom sessions. But it's also so nice to be there. If anybody ever finds themselves in Sedona, I've also sent many people to you who are like, I want to have a reading while I'm here in Sedona. And I'm like, I know the perfect person. So
Thank you.
I highly recommend for people who are listening to go and see you in your office if
Mhm.
they are there, but you don't have to go to Sedona to
Mhm.
connect with you. And you are an exemplary Akashic Records reader. And I would love to start with this, talking about your journey, how you got into the Akashic Records, and how you came to be a spiritual guide.
Oh, my goodness. That takes me back quite a few years, actually. And I kind of, well, I think like most people, you kind of start to fall into something. I was in corporate. I had shoe shops, I had franchises. So I was running my own business, which, as I look back now and I see the type of business I was running and how I was running it, I ran it like a temple anyway. It was full of amazing women that I felt I had a connection with. And now I see that it was a past life connection. In 2007, it had kind of reached that change point. And so I started to follow the journey of spirit and where I was called to go in various places. And the Akashic Records, I actually, again, it came on like quite a surprise. I was running a dual life. So, businesswoman, single mom, weekends, I was running off to Glastonbury. If you can hear from my accent,
Because
I'm
you were,
originally
yes,
English.
yes. And were you, I forget, were you in Northern England, like Manchester
Yes.
area? Okay.
Across the way, a little further north in Durham, Newcastle. So
Okay.
Durham, where the cathedral and the castle is. North Yorkshire. So I was kind of living in a Harry Potter village, cobblestones, quaint, very quiet.
Beautiful.
And it was so beautiful. And it was a perfect place for me to raise my daughter. But it also started me to look at, why am I here? What am I doing? And I started to look around. And I think someone said to me the other day, it's like you look at your five people of influence, and is that really where you want to be? And I loved the people I was with, but it was, well, there's something more, and I just couldn't put my hand on it. I couldn't answer it. So I started going to spiritual workshops in Glastonbury, where we had the famous connection to the Tor statue monument, Merlin, Avalon. And I started to meet people that were on a similar path to myself. They were looking for spiritual insight. They were looking for healing. They were looking for answers. And I found my mentor. She had a retreat center in Glastonbury. And her main thing that she did was she took groups to Egypt. And that opened my entire spectrum, my entire world. Because I went on a journey with her and 40 other people. And when you're dealing with that back then, everyone was into past lives and who they really were. And I didn't have the language skill and I didn't have the understanding. But what I did have was this innate ability to go into a temple, read the energy, and tune in and feel what it was to be in that place. And I started to witness people having emotional moments. And I remember a group of women, it was Philae Temple, the Divine Temple to Isis, and a group of women were crying. And they didn't know why they were crying. And I went over and I took one of their hands and I said, I'm seeing this and I'm seeing this like tremor of the earth and I'm seeing temple falling. And they said, yes, we saw that in our past lives as well. That's where we were last year. We missed our initiations. And for some reason, the novice that I am, the innocent, started to create an initiation with them. And it was simply that the temple and the energies from before were working through me. I assumed that this was my past life. And I would write it in my journal. And after 2 weeks, I realized that no, I couldn't have been all these timelines. And so to me, oh my gosh, I think I'm stepping into this realm, but I don't know what it is. Until someone said to me, have you heard of the Akashic Records? And I said, what's that? And I made it my purpose, my quest to investigate that, look into that, and understand it. And so that's how it started. And I didn't come across anybody that had written about it or taught about it till very much later on. But by that time, I was working in that method in my own way, that I started to realize that that could help people, because the Akashic Record, it's their soul's database. And it made sense to me that we get our computers cleaned, updated, we get rid of the old emails, we put in new programs. So if we can do that on our devices, why can't we do that for ourselves? So I created a therapy with it. And that was how it started.
Wow. Now, when I hear about people who work with the Akashic Records, I often hear about that there are guardians, for example, and that there are like there are in what's the word I'm looking for? Like invocations or prayers that specifically open the records. Do you experience it that way?
No, no.
Okay.
That is a particular school.
Hmm.
It's a beautiful, wonderful school created by a lovely lady called Linda Howe, and that's her method and her methodology. And it's widely used by a lot of people. It's used by a lot of my students. And where I come from is more of an ancient mystery school, primarily through Atlantis. So I began to track my past lives all the way back through to the Atlantean temples. And I began to see that back in those times, many thousands of years ago, we had this innate sense. We had activated sixth senses. Our crown chakras were different, our third eyes were different, and we were really in an elevated ascension mode. So I began to do past life regression, remote viewing back into that. And then working in Egypt was the only place that I kind of found on the planet where it was still represented. It was still shown so that it was an easy map for me to navigate. And from there, I began to see that it's exactly as you said, there's guardians and gatekeepers. And once you have those keys and codes, you can go into those various realms. And I will do it like eyes open. I'm seeing this, I'm feeling this, I'm knowing that. Or we will do it in a regression where I'll lead a person through that into the garden so that they can experience their own records. So the universe and spirit really wanted me to learn in an alternative way, which was connected through the temples. And once I started working in Egypt temples, I began working in Greek temples and Roman temples and Mayan temples and all of these different temple sites, but they all appeared to have a similar format and a similar connection in the records that once you knew how to unlock the doors, you could go in safely or you could take someone else in. So that's where I made my study. And then over, I guess, 2 decades, I began to investigate the libraries. And so with my therapy, we have 5 key library stations. We do past lives, present lives, future lives, the life between lives, and then the cosmic lives. So that's where my kind of work differs. And mine goes in through a sacred heart. So you could say it's like an invocation, a little prayer to self, but we go into it in a very different, more of a mystery school way than is traditionally taught.
Right. Yeah, because when you were describing it, it was because I loved how you said that you were realizing that you're like, No, I don't, these aren't my lifetimes. Like I wasn't subsequently, living all of these lives, but there's just this very fluid way that you're tapping into it.
Yes.
And it was what I was like visualizing or seeing was like these layers of frequency. And you were just like, pulling on like, oh, okay, well, here's the energy and just naturally tapping into it. And that was a way that I haven't pictured the records before. So
Ah,
when I think about the records, I think of more of a library, like a
mhm.
massive etheric library, and it really has that feel to it. And when you were talking about it, it was much more like energy layers
Mhm.
that were more frequency based. And I think underneath the surface it's the same thing, but it was just a really different experience of it, which
Yeah.
is really fascinating.
Yeah. What I found was that I wanted people to be comfortable to access it. I wanted people to understand that a lot of things that you're seeing and reading in the records are metaphors and messages. I didn't want people getting stuck in, I'm this famous person or I'm this certain person, so therefore I have to be that program. I wanted people to be their own authentic selves. And what I began to see was that we had all these curses and clutter and contracts. And while we're so busy looking at, well, what was it? Where was I? We're not necessarily changing things for ourselves and renegotiating our contracts, our karma. And what I've come to understand, and I describe it as our unfinished earth business. And I'm in the business of helping people clear, solve, understand, and sort all of those unfinished aspects out because I noticed up in the life between lives, and I've taken many of my students into that inner regression remote viewing, and we've all said the same. Oh my gosh, all these beautiful souls coming up with unfinished business, and our teams up there are overworked. And so we're here now, and my thing is, well, let's get down to soul business. And this is where that soul elevation comes in, because as you're working on yourself, you're elevating your soul that's dealing with everything in the records upstairs and downstairs. So,
Wow. Well, I'd love to go deeper into the
mhm.
life between lives and how. So, when you talk about unfinished business, is this that? Let's talk about that in relation to soul purpose and
Yes.
life purpose, and then how that feeds into the life between lives.
Yes. Many, many years ago, I was organically in Egypt and these places doing past life regressions. My teacher was teaching me. I was doing some hypnotherapy training. And I came across a beautiful friend, a lovely lady called Kate Spencer, and she was hypnotherapy therapist trained, and she was training with someone called Michael Newton. And he was the foremost expert on life between lives. And her and I went into a regression together. And all of a sudden, we saw how she was helping souls come up with their record books. And I was helping sort out these records and saying, oh, yes, you had the car. Yes, you had the home, the family, but you weren't really happy and you didn't find your joy. And these were things where we were seeing that we could help people with down on the planet. So I went my way, she went her way, and I started to look at, well, if we can get into this life between life area, what actually happens? And so in my regressions, I saw souls being escorted by angels and being brought up, teams of librarians meeting them. The more challenged the soul, the more care and support was given. And with my students, because we're going in constantly, we're constantly learning. So in the last kind of 2 years, we began to see, I call them the red rooms. And the red rooms are these rooms where I saw souls going into, and they would be processing their sorrows, their shame, their challenges. And it was never about how it physically looked, it was how it emotionally felt. Now, there were people elevated, ascended, that were going into, now I call them the purple rooms, because they did more or less come off that wheel of incarnation on the earth plane. They'd done their business. And then I began to see that there were souls that were coming downstairs. Like I call them the new baby star seeds, and they're all bouncing and energetic. But at the same time, they've got questions for certain people of, will I be safe? How can I find my parents? Which are the countries I'm going to? What lessons will I face? What will be my soul purpose? So I created this whole, in my reality, simple dynamic, like an architectural plan of souls coming up, being sorted, cleared, placed back into a position that they can then go through into the incarnation development. And what I've been able to do with my students and clients is take them up to what we call a balcony to view this, to see how that life between life works. And very often I will say to my client, where is it you show up? And they will say, oh, I've seen this in a dream. I work over here with the new baby souls, or I'm helping with the healers and trauma experts over here. And then what happens is they're able to, through numerology, human design, we also look at their astrology, and we can see where this is a path that they've chosen to incarnate with. And as soon as I saw, well, my life path is an 8, karma, cause and effect, work with the karmic board and help with unfinished business, boom, work in the Akashic Records. And it made my purpose so simple that all of the jobs and work that I was doing, if it didn't align with that purpose, then it really wasn't in my bandwidth. It wasn't my wheelhouse. It wasn't my path. And that made my life so much more simpler than kind of trying to search around in the dark. So, yes, the life between life gave me that direction.
Wow, that's fantastic. And in the work that you do with other people, are you finding that people are innately more or less aligned with what is showing as their soul purpose? in the sessions with you, or are you seeing a lot of misalignment and opportunity for, okay, well, here's some really obvious reasons why you're not happy
Mhm.
and where the opportunity lies for a life change?
Yes, it's exactly as you said. I feel a lot of us have come down with various programs. And what I also do is because we're in Sedona, everybody talks starseed, there's light language. And I began to see a lot of people with culture, home background, locations, but also where they've come from their star lineages, where they've come from their past lives, where they've come from their ancestors. There's this whole box of information that is it's not necessarily congruent, it's kind of fighting with each other. But when you open up their records and just say, this is your ancestor lineage lessons, this is your soul lessons, your cosmic lessons, there's often some alignment. And when you get that alignment and you make it kind of tangible and simple, they kind of can go, oh, so this is my kind of three energies to work with at the moment. It could be love, peace, and happiness, or balance, bliss, and beauty. But once they get those frequencies, they can manifest within their world and create their world and create the changes. Because a lot of us are thinking, I have to live in this certain way, I have to look in this certain way. And because then it becomes a mental, physical process rather than a spiritual, emotional one, it's almost like we're fighting the waves, or we're pushing the tide. And that's where it becomes a struggle, that we're not working with the universe, we're trying to create the universe. Now, I believe that we
Mm.
should all be proactive and take action. I'm an Aries, so with 10 planets in the first house, it's kind of crazy and I can't stop it. I know, 10 elements in fire. Um,
Wow.
I know. But that's the thing is, I've seen so much where souls have gone upstairs and gone and they've come back to me maybe on the earth plane and said, I missed this window, or now I see what I was supposed to be looking at. I wish that I had some direction on the earth plane. So, with my Akashic therapists, that's what we're here to do, give people direction, insight, but they ultimately have to take that responsibility and walk that path. And what I find is, and I found this very early on in Glastonbury, we would have lawyers, physicians, academics coming in from London to Glastonbury and saying, I just want a simple life, and if I can meditate and connect to spirit. And my thing was we need those lawyers and doctors and people in those areas with spirit. So why can't we combine the two? And that was where I found people, if you can merge that, you're not living the shamana life of namaste all day, but you're not then living that corporate hamster wheel. If you can blend both of those energies in this lifetime, I find that people are calmer, happier, more resilient. And it's those people that seem to attract a lot of that abundance in life.
That's so beautiful. So you talked about, again, with the Akashic Records, that it's you can access past lives,
Mhm.
life between lives, but also future lives.
Yes.
And so that is fascinating. I'd love to know what how you access future lives, and then also how like timelines and free will play into that.
Mhm. So, how I describe when I was in 2019, I took a group to Egypt, and we were accessing connections to different temples than what I was used to. And I had an initiation in a temple called Medina Habu. It was famous because of its connection with Ramses III, but also it's famous because it's just been discovered that that part of anyone that's been to Luxor will have gone possibly to Karnak Temple. You then have the Nile, and then over here you have like that fifth dimensional world, Valley of the Kings. They've now discovered that there are temple sites in the middle. I call them the fourth dimension. And it's where the priests would create everything for the pharaohs in the afterlife. So they're working not in the reality world, they're working, and they're not in the spirit world, they're working between. And I began to have this insight. And at the end of the trip, we'd done the teaching because I take people in between the paws of the Sphinx. We do the teaching, the initiations, and the remote viewing into all of the area of Giza Plateau. And I happened to be walking down the side. Everyone's doing sunset photos because we've finished. And I look at the one of the guides and I said, "Why is that hole in the back of the Sphinx?" And I said, "Can I look?" And so they pulled the grate away and I put my hands in and I began to feel this energy. And whether it's safe or it's not, I'm known for temples and tombs and getting into places and going down ladders and I'll go. And no, it's not really safe. But anyone that's watched the amazing Zahi Hawass, who's I've been so blessed to have personal time with him. And you see this man on a rope going down into these temples. And I managed to get down and stand in the rubble under the Sphinx. And I had this
Oh my
whole
word.
matrix alignment. It was like the Matrix movie, all of this green. And when I came out, I knew that I had to create something for people to kind of see into the records because there was things of the future that we were starting to see. So I created my Oracle training and I put several people through it and then we put more people through it and they began to see future timelines like I was. And what was interesting is many of them saw this virus, this illness coming.
And
And
this was in 2019, just
this
to
was in
remind people.
2019.
Wow.
Yeah. And we were
Yeah.
buying like medicines for lungs and breathing. It was strange that why would you stock
Really?
up on vitamin C? Um,
Wow.
and so we had no idea. I can't say that we knew what was coming. We just knew something was happening. And I began to discover that, I had to put my earth head on or my earth helmet. And I began to see that in this lifetime, our words, our deeds, our actions are all filtering up to the Akashic field, creating our karmic balance. And in that way, that every so often you can get a report card, and the report card will say, "This is what you intended to do in your life, and this is unfinished business." But it was very difficult to see unfinished business in the present life records. So I created a way that you could go into a future timeline, and it wasn't your timeline of this earth incarnation. It was seeing a projection of yourself in a future from now, say 70 years from now or 100 years from now, that if you came back on earth, what would you be doing? Not what you looked like, not who you were, not where you were, but what are your key lessons? So we created what I call a mirror technique, where you see yourself, you see your aura in that timeline. And if that aura was coming back to earth, what would be their key lessons? What are the key people in shadow around you? And people started to say, "Oh, I've got that person back in my life again. And I haven't resolved it, but I can resolve it in this timeline." So it was a call to action. So the first thing was resolving your unfinished business with people, family, organizations, different things like that. It was a call to action. What I also started to do was take groups or pods of people in, and we would see what was going on in humanity. And I did this exercise at the Los Angeles Conscious Life Expo. I had a room, we even had people on the floor, but we had a packed room of people, and we took them all as a group 100 years into the future. And they'd all named, they wanted to check on society, health, children, animals, water. And because as a group, we all were able to see what certain levels of humanity were like. Some saw it as very positive, some saw parts of the world as challenged, but all agreed that we'd kind of seen something that made us want to change in this moment. So I've done that with clients where they've taken their work and then seen what their work is like in the future, or their area of work, their body of work. And what we've said then is, well, what change do we have to create today, 2025, that can make changes for the future? So again, it was a collective call of action. It was an individual call of action. But when you can see that the new children in 100 years from now are super sensitive, super psychic, super connected, for me, if you're working in that modality or you've got a family, then knowing that your ancestors could be working in that is a call to action for you to take action today. And that's how I found we can't change necessarily future events. And as an oracle and librarian, it's not my job to change things. But where there's a call to action and someone can feel a positive motivation now, then for me, anything positive we can put in the pot, I'm all for that.
I love that. And it's so like mind bendy because it is kind of like, let's project out into the future. Now, let's be in the future and like reach back through time to that future's past, which is now.
Mm-hmm,
But that's where our power is right now. But
mm-hmm.
it's very like just seeing the like hand holding through the timelines. And that's pretty trippy.
Yeah. Yeah. And
It's
that's
very
why,
practical, but it's
mhm,
very trippy.
yeah, it's very trippy. But it's in that practical way that I was kind of having to make it grounded. And I'll tell you where that notion came in. Um, Back in, I think it was about 2005, I was working with an amazing group of people. They had a retreat center in Wales, and they brought over a remote viewing teacher, a gentleman called David Morehouse. He was one of the original remote viewers that came through the military training. And I was helping do some of his promotions and marketing because he was teaching at my friend's retreat center, Buckland Hall. And so I took his course. I signed up, signed the waivers, and I took the course. And I'm in a room with physicists, scientists, all of these technology people. And they kind of do a remote viewing method, which is similar to the Akashic Records, but you don't know where you're going. You're blindfolded, the music is on, you're in a room where you're kind of scribbling on paper and you're not knowing where you are. And because my spiritual background, I was having a wonderful time. I'm thinking, oh, I'm in Disney. I'm in the Louvre Museum. I was walking around Mecca, round a black box, seeing people, oh, this is wonderful. People are happy, people joyful. Because that's the thing with remote viewing, they don't tell you what the target is. And so I was having this experience, but I began to notice there was one experience that we did, and it was going to a volcano. And some people dropped in before the volcano when it was dormant. Some people dropped in when the volcano was exploding. And some people were there after the devastation. So that's how I realized that remote viewing is a very, very powerful, sophisticated tool. And it helped me understand that the brain is far more active and has far more abilities than we actually give it credit for. So I put my dolphin brain on and thought, well, if we can drop into those three volcano or volcanic timelines, we can do that for ourselves. And again, as long as we don't attach ourselves to the outcome and know that there's multiple different opportunities. When I'm teaching my oracles, I will say there are 10 possible outcomes. There's three most probable and one most obvious. And we're looking for those similarities, but then we're mostly looking for how can we grow and improve ourselves? How can we elevate ourselves and elevate our peers and our communities, that we're all working towards something greater? But that was how my
That's
mind
so
was working
beautiful.
to understand that. Because otherwise you
Yes.
could go
Wow.
crazy.
Yes. I love too you saying I put my dolphin brain on.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Put
I
my
love
dolphin
it.
brain.
Yeah. So this makes me think too about let me go back here because you were talking about 2005, and
Yes.
it makes me reflect as well. You've been in this work and working with people for 2 decades now.
20
And
years. I know.
yeah, and a lot of you have a perspective that is unique in that way because a lot of people are newer to
Mhm.
this type of work. And we, as a society, as humanity, as a species, we have changed a lot in the last 20 years. And we're in a time of rapid acceleration right now, too.
Mhm.
I would love your perspective on if you like zoom out 50,000 feet and you see like how people or what your work was like, what your the people that you were working with, what they were like sort of in the beginning, in that sort of 2019-ish kind of time where it's sort of like, because I feel like there was a huge boom that happened around 2020. Um, so maybe like pre-boom, and then like as we're in this boom, and then even maybe, what you see coming.
Mhm. So when the COVID happened, it was very interesting because I started to witness that. And because, I'm English, I'm on the Zoom call with my parents every week. They're still in England. And so I began to watch what was happening in different areas of the world, different cultures. And it was also COVID was, some people went absolutely where they grew, they flourished. And some people, it was like everything went in, it imploded. I started to check in the records, and actually, we've had this several times in our Earth history. So, when we've had times of the Black Plague, when we've had times of virus, where we've had times of the Spanish flu. So, where it came from and how it happened didn't really alter or come into my field or teachings. But what I began to see was that after those pandemics or those viruses, there was a spike in consciousness. There was a spike in elevation where within us, on a survival, you could say, as human beings, we try to evolve in certain ways. What I saw from that was a lot of new innovations happening, a lot of different family dynamics happening. And I started to tune into the fact that it was, for me, the start of the Aquarian age. The Aquarian age is everything going up in the air. So everything's up in the air for this next 2,000 years. And that means money has gone digital, communication has gone digital, therapy's gone digital, families have gone digital. And the children that kind of came in the 90s were very technology savvy. And so, again, they came with a different project to the Earth plane. So I started to look at, okay, baby boomers, Gen X's, the Gen Y's, or the millennials, and all the way, because now we're in generation beta. These are the new babies coming. And they all seem to have these different remits, different ways of looking at life. And COVID was a little bit like, for me, this wake up for everybody to bump us into the Aquarian age. And
Mm.
in that way, for me, looking at that from an Akashic record point of view, one of the things I teach is social media is your Akashic record. Whatever you're putting, like a podcast like this, whatever you're putting into your socials is going smack into your Akashic record upstairs. So when your days are done and I'm going through your ledgers, it's like, well, what message did you bring? What help did you bring? Or what harm did you bring? And so, in this way, for me, COVID was all about take responsibility for yourself, take responsibility for your own health and well being. Your business is your business, their business is their business. And how are you partaking in society? And how are you partaking with your fellow companions, your friends? And a lot of the new babies, it was just like, we're just with mommy and daddy, or it's just our little family. And so what I started to see for society 30, 40 years from now is that people are starting to go into more still technology, but more simpler.
Hmm.
I've just come back in from Costa Rica, and it's all about that pura vida, that I'm big into the blue zones and, that longevity in life. And whilst we can be achieving things, it's without that chaos and that drama. So that's what I'm kind of starting to see that swing from. And COVID, that timeline of 2019-20 was a massive change for me. I got a call from a dear friend. We both write for the Sedona Emergence magazine, and he's a spiritual teacher all through Asia. And Brother Ray said, China wants you to teach. And I said, but it's China. Yes,
Yeah.
they want your subject. And the next thing I knew, 6 months later, 2020, there I am at 5 a.m. in the morning, and I've got 200 Chinese students in Beijing
Wow.
on their phones listening to me talk about Akashic Records and energies and healing and cosmic and dragons and all of the subjects that I cover. So my work expanded because I didn't get stuck in the groove of this is the problem and this is being done to me. I kind of said, well, let's go with the flow of it and let's expand with it and let's breathe out with it. So things such as, wearing masks. It was a case of, well, I'm having to put a mask on. And I always say to people, put your spiritual mask on, your oxygen mask. So I looked at it as that, where I could have some silent time, I could have some private time, but my evolution really expanded and grew. And that was where my takeaway from that. And I also
Wow.
started to see this expansion within the spiritual world. And it's interesting, I'll go to a lot of events and speaking events, and a lot of, I call them the star seeds. They're like, Amanda, I had my awakening in 2019 and 2020, and I started doing my shaman work, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that. And, that's 6 years. But because of the work that the likes of I've done, you've done, we've opened these doors very early on so that they can rise quicker and faster. So, yes, they are coming through quicker and faster. And sometimes they don't necessarily have the bandwidth, the language skills, or the knowledge that I've built up over 20 years. So, my job and my role is to help them elevate, but still stay in a safe space, because a lot of the new spiritual community, sometimes they're going into their medicine journeys, which are amazing for opening them up to the Akashic field. But what if you can't turn that Akashic field off? It can make you feel very ungrounded and unstable. So there's a very fine line in this awakening movement that I kind of have to put on the table as a discussion,
Mhm.
that we want people to elevate in that, but we also want to keep them safe and grounded in doing their earth journey, because that's what they came to this planet for their earth experience.
Yes, thank you. That's so wise. And it, of course, dovetails beautifully into my next question, um, which you pretty much started to answer anyway. But um, you have your work has a big galactic element to it. And so what importance do you put on galactic incarnations? Because I love what you say with sometimes people get stuck or they get so enamored in the galactic, star seed, oh, I'm from this or I'm this, and so how does it relate back to the human life and
Mhm.
the importance of focusing on the human life and
Yeah.
not discounting it?
Yeah. For me, the work that I've done, the regressions, because mainly, like you said, my work is one to one. Even my training is one to one. And what I came to find was that there were many spiritual teachers, and because I was blessed enough to do readings for them, like the Wayne Dyer energetics, and read for Wayne when we were over in Dubrovnik, and meet Louise Hay, and spend some time with the Greg Bradens. What I began to see is these teachers come from various different backgrounds, but they all seem to have this. I called it this galactic awareness, even though they probably wouldn't describe themselves as star seeds or galactic beings. And I began to see that many people had incarnated through star frequency. We carry stardust within us. We come to this earth plane, and we start going through our lessons. And I began to see that certain races had different motivations, like different cultures. If you went to China, it's different from going to France. France is different from going to, say, the United States. We all have our different thoughts, feelings, cultures, behaviors. And what I began to see was that the earth is a spiritual school for that to activate and work its way through. But we chose these human earth bodies so we can all kind of get on with other aspects of the universe. So the earth is a micro of the macro. And how I found it was that the galactics, I can't believe that we're the only civilization in the whole universe. Um, because of the things that I see and people tell me and things that I've witnessed. And what I began to see was that when a star elixir, like the moon moves our emotions, the moon moves our oceans. It's a very, very powerful energetic. So my thing is, well, if the moon can move me, what can Orion do? What can Arcturus do? What can Lyra do? So helping people find their star origin or their star frequency, it's not necessarily about who or what they are, it's what is the elixir of where you're from. And in Abydos Temple in Egypt, every Egypt temple has what they call a Holy of Holies. It's the high altar, the shrine. Abydos actually has 7 chambers. And when I went to do my work there, what I found was these were Stargate chambers. And I was able to tap into different energies. So when I take my students, I will say, okay, this is more Syrian energy. It's more about communication. This is more Palladian energy. It's more about peace. Arcturian energy. It's more about healing. And so, in a way that we can have a multi aspect, it's serving us rather than saying, I'm living out an episode of Star Wars or Star Trek. It's interesting, certain things when I watch Star Wars or I watch Star Trek, these are actually very symbolic shows from the Akashic Records of the Galactic Wars. And I found a high percentage of Palladian energies around Los Angeles and Hollywood, that was one of the ways they were teaching us. They were teaching us about galactics through movie and television because it was speaking to so many people. It was more than a fascination. And so my thing is, I know you don't necessarily want to be on this earth plane, but your soul has chosen this. You've come for whatever energetics. So again, be the hybrid. Build it into your world that it helps you and helps humanity. And in that way, helping people to move through that and evolve with that. Now, there are races that are on the planet which are a little challenging. And you hear people talk about the reptilians and these kind of aspects. And what's interesting is I meet a lot of that when I go to the events. But what I find is that if you're just holding space and you're not confronting and, putting them into this box, they're here on this earth plane with the messages of them. And I remember having a really beautiful, connected conversation with someone at the most recent Conscious Expo that, they were quite obvious and open. Yes, I'm studying humanity, I'm studying these people. And to most people, it would have been a little bit weird. But knowing where their heritage or the elixir they're working with, I wasn't challenged by it. I was just like, oh, yeah. And we just had an earth conversation. And because I do a lot of work navigating people with their galactic teams and their galactic families, and also I call it the Galactic United Nations, I see that we're all in this together. So when Star Wars did, I think it was one of the movies where it's the Princess Amidala, whichever one she was, and she goes and talks to the Senate. I've had people go to these places in their dreams, in their regressions, in their sessions, and I bear witness to that. So it's a very surreal environment. I wrote my cosmic book about it, and I teach, I think I'm up to about 28 different races that have unlocked their energy libraries to allow me to help other people to study. But the main contract is, and I say this to my people every time I take them in that king's chamber in the Great Pyramid, which is, to me, it's like a spaceship, is you can come in, I can take you out, but your contract is you have, my darling, to come back. You have to do your earth journey in whatever way that that shows up. And so this is how I can be at the cosmic conferences. I can speak at the Ascension conferences. I can work within many of those different worlds. And it helps that I'm English and teeny tiny and nobody pays much attention. So I can kind of get into these realms and not offend anyone,
Mhm.
and not get too serious about it. But at the same time, take it serious enough to know that this is someone's reality and this is their world. And for many of them, at one time, we just had a language of 4 or 5 different races. Everybody thought they were from Sirius, but Sirius is actually where a lot of us came through from education perspective to come onto the planet. And then they realized, no, that's not where I'm from. And I even have people now, because there are two, I call them fissure lines, where I have people that, Amanda, I don't think I'm from this universe. And they're coming through the Andromeda Galaxy and the Orion Nebula. There's two, what we call like black holes in those areas. And I'm not a physicist, not a scientist. I purely go off the work that I'm doing with people. But when several people say the same thing and they're not connected, they're on different continents in different ways, then I have to say there's something that I want to kind of look at or study or evolve with. So, yeah, the galactics is a whole exciting aspect. Like, I have a Stargate in my home,
Yes.
a physical one. Um, I can't dismiss it. But at the same time, I'm very much where I have to have that 3D reality, knowing that I can connect in all those other dimensions as well. So keeping it grounded, that's the main thing.
Yes, the practicality with it. It's so expansive, but I really love how you keep it practical and grounded because
Yeah.
it can be really easy to either one, like not even be able to understand what what is being communicated, or to kind of not, I mean, carried away is kind of the word that comes to me, but I don't mean it like that. I mean it more in just like to over identify with it and to be like, well, I'm not even supposed to be here.
Hmm.
I'm Andromedan or whatever it might
Hmm.
be.
Yeah.
But
And that's the thing. It's, well, you're here. Your team is upstairs cheering you on. Um, they're watching for you. You might be the only one from because there's 7 to 8 billion people here. There's trillions of stars and planets. I just had a beautiful lady on my Costa Rican retreat. She works with space stations, she works with NASA, and I've got her on this virtual spaceship zipping around the universe when we're doing our regressions as a group. And she was able to put that and assimilate into it. Like she said, there's so much from my scientific background that we really don't know. Then my scientific brain cannot dismiss this. And I'm providing this nice, comfortable, soul evolving journey. And for her, that was a really nice compliment that she can bring in to get messages, but she doesn't have to leave the planet or kind of go in a physical astronaut or spaceship to do that. So that I love
Yeah.
blending those worlds.
Yes. Oh, it's amazing. So, Amanda, it is just such a pleasure and honor to have you here. I love you so much. Your work is just amazing. And I'll just reiterate to listeners, I get asked a lot for recommendations. If you're looking for somebody to give you a reading, to help you understand where you are, to take you through an Akashic regression so you can experience it for yourself, understand your soul purpose. Like, I personally use Amanda myself. She is amazing. She is such a beautiful guide and resource. So please do connect with her. Please tell people how they can connect with you.
Very, very simple. If you think of my name, Amanda Romania, Romania like the country, it's amandaromania.com, www.amandaromania.com, or my email, amanda@amandaromania.com. All of my socials are under Amanda Romania. It's not necessarily my name, it was my husband's name, so I inherited it. And that's an easy way to reach out and connect to me on the socials, on TikTok, on Facebook, on Instagram. I'm always kind of active in doing things in Sedona or speaking at some of the events. And I also write with Sedona Emergence and the Awakening magazine. So there's lots and lots of ways to follow the work, connect into the work, tap into the work. And like I said, my greatest joy is helping people elevate and see the difference that they do. So, Cara, I've watched your journey since way back, and you have just grown and grown and grown. And your persona, personality, and your purpose, and how that helps and elevates people to elevate their influence. It's just like this amazing communication that you bring and this heart energy, and it's so gentle and but so strong and powerful. I really, really look up to people like yourself, and to be part of that journey along the way is so inspiring, because I look at that and I tell people, check out what Cara's doing. You know, she's a voice for all of us, and she's giving other people their voice. And so that's an incredible, incredible thing to do. So thank you. And
Oh.
thank you to the people that you're sharing me with. I absolutely am honored.
Oh, thank you so much. That really means so much. I love you so much. And I'm so grateful for you being here. Thank you, Amanda.
My honor, my pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me for this episode of Soul Elevation. If someone in your life would be inspired or uplifted by what you heard today, please take a moment to share it with them. These are the kinds of conversations that ripple out and elevate collective consciousness. And if you haven't yet, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the powerful episodes ahead. Your presence, energy, and support truly help amplify this mission of raising frequency and anchoring in a more awakened humanity. Thank you for your support, and I'll see you for the next episode of Soul Elevation.